Alright, so here's a motor that I had been wanting to check out. This is the MYRCMART's RCX NK2204-2400KV. So this motor is rather small compared to all the big motors that we've been getting lately, like the 2207s, 2306, 2507s, etc. So this one came out some time ago. I guess the main purpose was for a very light build on 5-inch. So 2204s have not been popular lately because everybody's going to the big motors. But then there's been some interest in very ultralight builds. So I guess that's where this motor comes in. KV is kind of like mid-low KV, 2400. And the size, of course, is fairly small stator, 2204. But the one thing with this motor is that it's got all the bells and whistles, all the latest features, you know, that we've been coming to expect from all the new motors. So it's got arc magnets and one-piece shaft, 70-75 aluminum construction all around, and large bearings actually, and as you can see there's also a shaft retaining screw there, so that's pretty cool. So it's a full feature motor but in a small size, actually a size that hasn't been that popular lately, so pretty interesting motor from RCX. I think they're only offering this 1 kV, 2400 kV. So as you see, pretty typical styling from RCX. Most of their motors have kind of like the similar pattern on the spokes here on the bell. Just a minimal 4 spokes to keep it light. And now they're going. This was one of the first ones with the naked bottom actually. Then later on, a few weeks later, the 2306 came out, and now the 2207s are coming out. They're just being released recently. So those other 2 motors I also tested. The results are on the channel. Just look for them. Pretty good performing motors as well. The NK2206 I believe is 2400 or 2500, I forget, and the other one is 2700, and similar KVs for the 2207. So those other motors also perform quite well. Alright, so let me take that out. Actually, I'm noticing that's the kind of screw that I actually like the most. It's a button head screw, so it's got pretty deep socket and it's a pretty strong screw, so it's gonna be more difficult to round it off, you know, to mess it up. So those screws are pretty good. Some other motors, they use like a shallower head, so there's not much material, and they're harder to get out. So this one seems the Loctite they're using is not that bad. It's you could feel the Loctite, but it's not overly hard, and pretty good size screw, so that's a good screw to use. And there's the brass washer. Yeah, that's a fully hollow shaft actually all the way through, so that's pretty good. There we go. And I'm also noticing that's one of those nice beefy bearings. That's a 4x9x4 bearing, so that's good. Yeah, that's a 9mm bearing, so more than enough bearing for this motor. Should make this motor very durable, I think. So once the screw is out, we can pull the bell out, and these magnets are pretty strong. And let's have a look on the magnifying glass so we can have a closer look. Alright, so there's the stator and pretty neat windings. Those are multi-strand wires, and it looks like in bundles of 2. And there you can see the really good ISO bearings, pretty beefy, 4x9x4. So that should make this motor quite durable, especially because the shaft, it only has to traverse it's only a 4mm height stator, so it's going to be a short shaft. So there's going to be a lot less stress on these bearings. So that's going to be those should be pretty durable, I think. Nice and beefy base actually, and wires are pretty neat. They're nicely tucked in, so nothing really hanging out. So that's good. They should be pretty well protected, I think. And there's the laminations. Looks like 0.2mm. So this motor is pretty much packing all the features, all the latest tech features. And shaft is one piece hardened steel. It is magnetic, so that should be hardened steel, I think. And yeah, there's a nice texture there for the prop, so that's good. 20mm gauge wire for the motor leads. Alright, so let's put this back together, and I'll put it on the scale, see how much it weighs. One other thing that I really like about RCX motors is that the bearings, they fit snugly. They're not loose, they just fit really snug, but they're pretty easy to remove, to pop out. So I like it when motors have those bearings that pop out easily, very easy to change. Okay, so let's put this motor back together. I'll put the retaining screw back on, and I'll put it on the scale, see how much it weighs, and then onto the thrust stand. Alright, so let's see what it weighs. That's 150mm of 20 gauge wire. So with that much wire, it comes in at 25.4, and so if we cut the wire to about 50mm, then we get rid of that much. So 2.4, we get rid of 2.4, so that's like about 23 grams with 50mm of wire. So alright, so here are the thrust test results for the RCX NK2204-2400KV. The motor came in at about 2300 kV, so a little bit lower than advertised. So this reflects on the results. As you can see on 4 and 5 inch props, the thrust is not overly high, but it's pretty decent, I think, considering you would use this on a ultralight build. Also, because of the low kV, you can actually run this motor on 5S, I think, with some of the props, with the 50-30 and of course any of the 4 inches, and perhaps even with one of these 50-45 props. It should run on 5S. Once the props unload in the air, the amps should be manageable. On 4-inch props, the motor makes a decent amount of thrust, as you can see, upwards of 700 grams on the lighter 4-inch props and 860 on the 4-blade prop. So a pretty good amount. I think this should be a decent amount for ultralight build. The one thing to note is that the motor is very efficient for these props. As you can see, the amps are pretty low. That will help with battery selection, so you don't have to run a large battery. So maybe an 800 or even or at 1000 milliamp hour battery will be fine for a build with this motor. Or you could also use a 5S battery and run any of these 4-inch props. 5S will also run on the 5-inch props. As you can see here, I ran it and the motor was pretty good running the 5S setup, but still, you know, I always say check motor temperature, you know, after the first flights, because you want to make sure the motor is not overheating. Then on 5-inch, then we start seeing thrust close to 1 kilogram, so not too bad, but still a little bit on the low side. So definitely this is going to be for ultralight, so you can have enough thrust to get moving. Either that or run it on 5S. So I think this motor would actually benefit quite a lot if they were to make a higher kV version, maybe like a 27, 28 or 3000 kV version of this motor would be pretty good. I think the components of the motor would certainly support higher kV, so that you can run 4-inch props and get enough thrust, or even 5-inch on 4S should be good on a higher kV. So overall, the motor, as you saw, was pretty well constructed, very well made, has all the features, a lot of potential. So I think on 5S this motor would be pretty good. It should be able to handle 5S, I think, on all these props. Perhaps not on the tri-blade, but all the 2-blade props should be able to handle 5S. So if anyone has run this motor on 5S and tri-blade props, let me know. I'd be interested. Any of these 5043 or 5040x3 props, that would be interesting to find out if any of you have run it on 5S. So overall, the motor has a lot of potential, I think. As you saw, it's very well constructed, beefy bearings and beefy shaft. So should be able to run on 5S to get the most out of it, or it'd be good also to have higher kV versions. So maybe RCX will release them at a later time. But in the meantime, I think this is a pretty good option, maybe for like a mellow 4S freestyle ultralight build. So okay, that's a thrust test for this motor. Hope you find the data useful, and until the next video.